Hey guys, Jason here to bring you another all-new top 10 list. Today, we are covering the top 10 cards of the Darkness Civilization. As with all these new top 10s, we put this together by first gathering as a team to agree on the top 10 cards. We then did our own individual rankings before averaging the results. I'm sure you guys know the drill by now, so that's enough intro from me. Let's jump in. Starting with the honorable mentions, which in a way was the hardest part of the ranking process due to the bottom slots being the most challenging to fill out, we have Propeller Mutant, Upheaval, and Photocide Lord of the Wastes. Propeller Mutant was probably the card that was the closest to making the list. Its solidified position in Water Dark Rush, as well as its compatibility with Hydrus, made for a compelling case, but we felt its overall power level still fell short. Upheaval is a very interesting card with potential applications in Water Dark hand control decks and in certain control builds. And while it did get Hall of Famed in Japan at some point, it's still an unproven concept in the TCG. But because it could have some future potential, I wanted to at least give it a shout out. Photocide is a very cool tech card that works well against many of the TCG meta's strongest threats. It can establish a stranglehold over the board against many decks playing light, and its 9k power allows it to circumvent Apocalypse Vice and Baz, and revenge kill most relevant boss monsters. Unfortunately, Photocide just misses out on the list due to its lack of presence in most TCG metas. Maybe one day. Kicking things off at number 10, we have one of the biggest falls from grace in the TCG, but a card I have a bit of a soft spot for, with Bloody Squito. Bloody Squito is a card that sees little to no play these days, which is a far cry from its high popularity in the early TCG era. This fall from grace can be easily explained by most modern decks just moving away from vanilla blockers, a trend also seen in the early OCG. If I'm being honest, it was pretty slim pickings for the bottom of the list, but I feel that Squito carries with it a certain level of versatility the honorable mentions lacked. I do think Squito still has some applications, like by acting as a cheap body for effects that benefit from a large board, and in acting as a cheap blocker that can answer Gonta. Perhaps not the most attractive applications, but it scores points for being easy to accommodate. For these reasons, and its legacy points from the early days, we are allowing Bloody Squito entry into the top 10. Speaking of slim pickings, coming in at number 9 is one of the game's most unique cards with Ghastly Drain. Though not exactly a staple or a world beater, Ghastly Drain is a card with some merits. One famous application is to pair it with Miraculous Meltdown and Pyrofighter Magnus to form a win condition in certain control builds. Other applications are to use it in strategies where sufficient upside can be gained from the aggressive draw, or as a tech in metagames where you want to access your shields. And though not necessarily the most competitive right now, it does have a place in certain combo decks, like in Spark Chemist and Hurricane Crawler, to ensure crucial combo pieces are not in shields. While Ghastly Drain is a card that younger Jason would have scoffed at, older Jason can at least see the situational usefulness and potential in the card, so with that in mind, I gotta give Ghastly Drain some respect. Moving into more competitive territory, we have a card which I feel only hit its stride in recent years, with Ice Vapor Shadow of Anguish. For a while, I would see this card brought up as a tech in certain mid-range strategies to help with control matchups, and to tell you the truth, I was never that impressed with it. But with time, we learned that the best way to use the card seems to be to have it front and center. The Lightwater Dark Nature Ice Sword mid-range deck, which has Ice Vapor and Miraculous Plague as its centerpieces, has managed to achieve some impressive results in IDC tournaments, and beyond this, I think it has great potential in other builds too. While Ice Vapor does have its shortcomings, like being comparatively weak in aggro matchups and not being as ubiquitous as the other cards in the Civ, it does at least have a solid track record and presents a lot of upside. It's a card I wouldn't be surprised to see rise the ranks in the future, but for now, number 8 will have to do. Coming in at number 7, we have a card that is like your love with Bad Medicine. Okay, that's not what it's called, but depending on the deck, I think you can argue that Morbid Medicine is what you need. When talking about the most quintessential concepts for the Darkness Civ, Graveyard Retrieval tends to take a back seat to discard and destruction, but to me, it is no less iconic. I feel that Morbid Medicine plays a crucial role in decks that aim to build large boards, like Wave Strikers and Hydro Hurricane. These sorts of decks tend to dislike creature removal, and Morbid Medicine gives them some resiliency by allowing the player to recycle 2 creatures in exchange for a single card. In a way, it's like an energy stream for the Darkness Civ, and beyond this, it can even be looped with Foul, which presents a lot of upside. Though not exactly a 3 or 4 of in most decks, when it comes to retrieving creatures from the graveyard, I guess there is a doctor that can cure the disease. Coming in at number 6, we have the other graveyard retrieval card of choice with Corpse Charger. This is the most interchangeable slot on the list, and placing Corpse Charger over Morbid Medicine was a choice that came down to personal preference. We all favored the ramp over the extra card at the time of voting, not only because of its long-term benefit, but also because the extra ramp would often allow users to squeeze out an additional play for the turn. If I'm being objective though, there are definitely arguments for both. Where Morbid Medicine provides greater upside in decks that are creature mass-centric, we feel that the mana boost Corpse Charger provides makes it an all-around more splashable card in good stuff type decks. I think where Corpse Charger shines is in situations or decks that really want to keep powerful but inefficient cards in play, such as Dragon Bosses and Fortress Shell. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention Bellix and Thrashcrawler, which can be looped with Corpse Charger. It may not be the most impressive card, but Corpse Charger brings with it an understated flexibility and clutch factor, and we feel it is a great card to round out the bottom half of this list. Coming in at number 5, we have our first and probably only 2-in-1, with 2 cards that are virtually identical in Locomotiver and Gigabalza. The only difference between the two is race, and though I don't think it's a big deal, if forced to choose, I guess I would say that Gigabalza is better, on the grounds of Chimeras seeing more success than Hedrians in the IDC. But for simplicity's sake, I'll just refer to this entry as Loco. I think Loco is interesting because I historically had a hard time pinpointing what exactly made it so valuable, and it is only when I started experimenting with different decks and cutting it from lists that I saw its key strength was it simply being useful in multiple situations. For example, the shield trigger status and body allow it to trade somewhat favorably against rush decks, and the random discard allows you to snipe certain targets like Baz, or at the very least, lets you be an all-around nuisance. I will admit that there are comparable cards that are better than Loco at doing one of its singular functions, but I'd say that Loco's value proposition is in being able to do many different things which its competitors cannot. Where Loco may lack an immediate impact, I would say it certainly makes up for in versatility, which is why it's getting the number 5 spot. Coming in at number 4, we have perhaps the most omnipresent, timeless, and universally useful card in the Darkness Civ, with Terror Pit. Terror Pit is interesting because when analyzed in the context of card advantage alone, it actually looks just okay. It only goes 1-for-1 in card advantage if not removing an evolution, and even when considering the relative costs involved, it's seldom removing targets that cost significantly more than itself. But the reason I find Terror Pit so great is because it has an effect that is almost always useful, meaning it will be a decent play during most points in the game. The nature of its effect means that Terror Pit will essentially always be live once the requisite mana is reached, and considering it can be played for 0 as a shield trigger, Terror Pit ends up being one of the game's most consistent cards. On top of this, I have also come to really appreciate the ability to hard remove a creature no questions asked, and this is something that becomes increasingly valuable as metagames evolve and new threats emerge. So, given all this, why didn't we place Terror Pit any higher? While there's certainly no denying Terror Pit's ubiquity and importance, the simple answer is, we felt that it was held back by not being as unique or as unfair as the 3 remaining cards on this list. Coming in at number 3, we have one of the TCG's more controversial cards and perennial Gauntlet favorite with Cranium Clamp. Aside from calls from TCG community members to see this card restricted in some way, Clamp is perhaps best known for its ability to smooth the mana curves of slower decks and bring the pace of games down to a grinding halt. Whether disrupting an opponent's sequence of plays, or pulling off what is essentially a half-price Lost Soul, I think we can agree that a well-timed Clamp typically places the user in a very commanding position, which can lead to them running away with the game. Although Clamp admittedly has limitations, such as falling short in certain game states, and having counterplay to it exist in the form of TDAD and to a certain extent Energy Stream, I don't think these distract from how powerful the card is. At the end of the day, few cards pack as much explosiveness into their cost as Cranium Clamp, and for being able to deliver its user card advantage in just about the most obnoxious way possible, we are happy to award Cranium Clamp the bronze medal spot on our list. Coming in at number 2, we have what many consider to be the most consistently powerful card in the Darkness Civ with... Wait, I forgot. It looks like I'm getting forgetful. Oh right, it's Lost Soul. As its ominous name would suggest, Lost Soul is a card that strikes fear into the hearts of players thanks to its ability to generate extreme card advantage and create huge momentum swings that are difficult for opponents to recover from. Lost Soul is a card that has consistently seen play in the game's early days, and as far as the TCG era goes, I don't think there has ever been a time where it wasn't considered good. Lost Soul does have the obvious disadvantage of being rather useless in the early game, but I think this is more than offset by how strong it can be in the mid to late stages. I mean, the importance that many place on winning the Lost Soul race really tells you all you need to know about the card. Ultimately, there aren't many cards that can truly compete with Lost Soul in terms of function, nor compared to its sheer game-deciding potential. And it is because of these that we are granting Lost Soul the runner-up spot on this list. Coming in at number 1, we have possibly the most polarizing entry with Slash Charger. Though not as widespread as the last few cards we've discussed, we placed Slash Charger at number 1 because it is in our view the most Hall of Fame worthy card on this list. Slash Charger is a crucial component of Deck Out, which is one of the most powerful and oppressive archetypes in all of early Duel Masters, boasting success across various rule sets including IDC, early OCG, and even ours. Though a compelling concept on its own, Slash Charger, especially when run in multiples, is what truly breaks Deck Out, thanks to its ability to accelerate the Deck Out win condition and ramp mana, which allows things to quickly snowball. To me, this dynamic fundamentally changes how the game is experienced and feels more like a balancing oversight rather than an intentional design choice. And even when restricted to one per deck, the Deck Out concept is still strong thanks to Slash being reusable with Belix and Thrashcrawler. Now, whether Slash Charger is Hall of Fame worthy because it is actually broken, or merely because of the gameplay experience it creates, is perhaps a topic deserving of its own discussion. But I think we can at least agree that the desire to have it restricted in some way is not an uncommon opinion. With that said, I think we can also agree that Slash Charger is the most inherently evil card we've covered in this video, and in a way, isn't that what being the number 1 Darkness card is all about? And that's our list. But aside from seeing the final Gauntlet list, I think you guys might also get a kick out of seeing our individual rankings. Even before we averaged the results, I was expecting Darkness to be the most homogeneous out of all the top 10s, just because there isn't a lot of ambiguity as to how good the cards are. My prediction was mostly right, with the only major disagreements being me not seeing eye to eye with the other two on Slash Charger and Terrapit. I was also iffy on Slash Charger because it only really fits into one deck, and while still strong, may not be as game-breaking in 40 plus cards. In saying that, the 40 card limit is adhered to by a fair chunk of the TCG player base, and I also figure that it's hard to argue against Slash being number 1, since it's the only card we felt was worth regulating. Anyway, let us know your thoughts and feel free to share your own top 10s in the comments below. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and we'll catch you in the next one.